what we see is a very disturbing trend in American law enforcement. We're seeing innocent citizens shot and killed on drug raids. We are seeing the wrong house hit on a drug raid. We are seeing high-powered weapons in the hands of untrained and therefore unskilled police officers. We're seeing scared cops who've been made to believe that, that they are going after the enemy, that is the mindset, who are much more likely to engage in impulsive behavior. And that ain't the way it's supposed to be. It's just not. I don't blame the agents. I don't even blame the heads of the agencies. I blame us. Whose laws are we talking about? We're really talking about the people's laws. And if we're not satisfied with the laws that our federal government is enforcing, then we really need to take a look at what our responsibility is. Why have we let this go so long? Over 100 million people have smoked marijuana at least once. We got an admission, I think, from the incumbent president. We had one from the previous president who, although he didn't inhale, admitted to putting it to his mouth and breaking the law. And I think it's just time for us to recognize that we're just being very, very foolish, and we're spending huge sums of money on drug enforcement in general, but on marijuana in particular. LEAP takes the view that prohibition doesn't work, never has, never will, that the drug war has caused more harm than good, that if we really want to deal with the nation's drug quandary or problem, that we will regulate the drug. We will legalize it so that we can regulate it, and then we can control it. We can't do that otherwise. We have spent $1 trillion prosecuting the drug war since Richard Nixon declared war on drugs in 1971. Another $69 billion a year down the rat hole, and what do we have to show for it? Drugs are more readily available today at lower prices and higher levels of potency than in the history of the drug war. So the longest running war in the history of the United States, armed conflict, I dare say, has been an abysmal failure. I characterize it as the most destructive and damning social policy since slavery. After my book came out, I was talking with a police chief who had read the drug chapter, and I said, okay, let me have it, because I know you're going to disagree with me. And he said, I agree with everything you're saying. I said, gosh, can I quote you? And he asked, well, what have you been smoking? And he says, no, you can't quote me. He was a new major city police chief. And I, by the way, talked to an awful lot of police chiefs and other elected officials who whisper their support for the legalization approach, but who are, for a variety of reasons, most of which are obvious, reluctant or fearful to speak out. But I asked this guy, as we were comparing notes over our drug of choice in the bar afterwards, how many people under the influence of marijuana turn violent on you? And I'm not talking about marijuana and any other drug, most particularly beer or wine or distilled spirits. How many have turned violent on you in your career as a cop? None. I've asked that question over and over and over in the last 2 or 3 years on book tour and speaking engagements and so forth. Not one police officer, not one has said, oh, I remember I had this pothead who, swung on me and I had to do this and so on and so forth. Then I'll ask, how about drunks? How about people under the influence of alcohol? And it's laughable. What, 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago? Come on. You work almost any beat in almost any city in this country, you're going to be dealing with belligerent drunks. And some of them become extremely violent, and some of them become extremely dangerous to the safety of a police officer, not to mention the other folks around them or themselves. So one of the things that's very clear is this dichotomy between a drug that does not produce that behavior, demonstrably does not produce that behavior, in fact, sort of the opposite behavior, and a drug that does. The drug that does produce more belligerence, more violence, more health problems and financial problems for our country, more family and community problems for our country than all other drugs combined is legal. So there's something wrong with that picture. HempFest in Seattle is the largest gathering, I think, in the world, certainly in North America, of marijuana advocates. The police officers working it enjoy it. The feedback that I got from my cops after my first year in Seattle was, that's great duty. Now, I don't know whether they were, experiencing secondhand highs or just what it was, but if we see somebody light up, we can't arrest them. And the emphasis on can, not will. On the other side, the organizers are announcing to the crowd, you cannot break the law while you're here. Well, of course, there is widespread law breaking going on at HempFest. You don't put tens of thousands of marijuana users together without a certain percentage of them smoking marijuana. The officers exercise discretion. Marijuana in the city of Seattle is now the lowest enforcement priority, the result of a citizen initiative, I-75. I think it was 2003, after I retired. And that was a message from the community to the police department and the prosecutor's office that we believe that simple adult possession of marijuana ought to be the lowest enforcement priority, lower indeed than jaywalking, and it is. People have this longing for the old days, and there's a tendency to romanticize that. There's no question about that. This idea that the beat cop was your friend, the beat cop was somebody you could turn to if you were lost or afraid or were experiencing problems in your own home or in your neighborhood. And it was, there are a lot of people who tell some pretty inspiring stories about what the police did for them many, many years ago. But what we've been doing since the declaration of the war on drugs, of course, is pitting the police against young people, pitting the police against people of color, wildly disproportionate numbers of whom are going to prison behind simple possession cases. They are losing their federal financing for their education. They're losing subsidized housing in some cases. They are developing that permanent record, that lifelong record, possibly the result of the possession of a joint. Commit the crime of rape, commit the crime of murder, be convicted, be sentenced, serve time, get back out. You go right back into public housing. You can get that federal financing of your education, but you can't if you're caught with any amount of any illegal drug. Who opposes an end to the drug war? Well, the drug warriors certainly do, because we have seen huge sums of money coming to local jurisdictions in the form of grants and assistance in the creation of task forces, seized and forfeited assets, which is an entirely different story. Well, it's not a different story, but it's a whole nother story. All of this feeding this beast, this incredible economic system. And I, speaking personally, I believe that this body is mine, that it is sovereign. I believe in taking care of it. But if I didn't, it would still be my right to inject, ingest, or inhale anything into this body that I chose. And that would include a bullet. That's my personal belief about individual liberty. At the same time, I recognize with equal force, equal power, that if what I put into my body causes me to drive impaired, furnish to a kid, or abuse a spouse or a child, or commit a bank robbery, that I need to pay a painful price for what I've done. So I think a whole lot of people can agree that it is possible to create laws that say, we're going to respect you as an individual. Once you venture out, or perhaps within the confines of your own home, you commit criminal acts that hurt other people, stand by, because you're going to pay for it. And that, I think, that resonates with an awful lot of people who haven't really thought through certain of the implications of the drug war. Society, friends, neighbors, let's think about what we're doing, arresting people over and over and over again, and not achieving a safer street, a cleaner street, a more healthy environment for our kids or for our business owners or for anyone else.